Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome once again. We begin the Bhagavad Gita with chapter number 1, which is entitled as Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra, or in Sanskrit it is known as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Now, Vishad means lamentation, confusion, bewilderment, and yoga means to link with the Supreme. So this chapter literally talks about Arjuna's lamentation and how eventually that lamentation leads him to a union with the will of the Supreme Lord when he takes a particular step which marks a turning point in his life. And that step will be discussed in the second chapter in detail. But the first chapter mainly talks about the events which set up a stage for Krishna to speak the Bhagavad Gita. It's like a background. And it begins with a question by Dhritarashtra. Text 1. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavah mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim akurvata Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So who is Dhritarashtra? Who is Sanjay? And what is it talking about? Let us just discuss the background leading up to this particular question. So to understand the great history leading up to this battle at Kurukshetra, which Dhritarashtra is mentioning, we have to read Mahabharata. But in brief we can discuss. There was a king of the name Shantanu. He was the king of the Kurus at Hastinapur. And by divine arrangement, he begot Bhishma in the womb of Ganga Devi, the presiding goddess of river Ganges. But since she is a celestial lady, she did not stay with him after the birth of Bhishma. So later on, Shantanu marries Satyavati. But her father had a condition that only Satyavati's son should become the next ruler. But according to the tradition, king's eldest son becomes the ruler, which was Bhishma. So Bhishma goes to Satyavati's father and he promises to remain a celibate, because he promised he will never occupy the throne, he will never claim it. Satyavati's father said, but what about your children? He said, I will never have children only. So that was a very, very powerful vow to remain a celibate. And that's when his name became Bhishma. Otherwise, earlier his name was Devavrat. So Bhishma is one of the main characters of Mahabharata. He was the grandsire, the grandfather of the Kurus, and the most powerful personality. So Shantanu and Satyavati had two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Chitrangada died in a battle with one Gandharva, and Vichitravirya also died later on due to a disease called tuberculosis. And later on, the two widows, Ambika and Ambalika, through Vyasadeva, they begot children who were named Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Vidura. So Dhritarashtra was born blind from the beginning. He was the elder one, but he was born blind. Vidura was born from a maidservant, so he was disqualified. Dhritarashtra, being blind, was disqualified, so Pandu was supposed to be the ruler. So Pandu had 5 children: Yudhishthir, Bhim, Arjun, Nakul and Sahadev. Pandu ruled the kingdom, but at some point he gave it up. He entrusted the kingdom in the care of Dhritarashtra till Pandu had children and who grew up. And Pandu died prematurely because of a curse. So naturally the kingdom should have gone to the Pandavas. That is the system. The kingdom goes to the children of the king. But Dhritarashtra, he had a typical materialistic mentality. He became very attached to the throne and he was thinking, oh, I could not become the king, so at least let my son Duryodhan become the king. Let my children occupy the kingdom, the throne. So he did not give it up. On the contrary, he and Duryodhana, they conspired together to eliminate the Pandavas on many occasions. There were attempts to poison them, to kill them, to attack them with deadly weapons, to have them cursed, to burn them alive. But throughout, because of Krishna's blessings, Krishna's intervention, even though he was living far away, Pandavas, being the pure devotees of the Lord, were always protected. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Mahabharata also, we know when Bhishma after the battle is lying on the bed of arrows. So he sees the Pandavas. Now the Kauravas are dead and the Pandavas have regained the kingdom. I'm just doing fast forward because an important principle has to be discussed. So Krishna takes the Pandavas duly dressed up as princes, and that's what Bhishma wanted to see. Even though he was fighting on behalf of Duryodhana, but he always loved Pandavas more than anybody else, and he always wanted them to rule the kingdom. He wanted them to be the kings of Hastinapur, to rule the world. And now his desire was getting fulfilled, and as soon as he sees the Pandavas standing next to him as he was lying down on the bed of arrows, he has tears of affection in his eyes and he tells the Pandavas, oh, what terrible injustices you Pandavas had to go through. Because Bhishma was a witness to all the conspiracies against the Pandavas, but he was helpless, he couldn't do much. Because Duryodhana wouldn't listen, Dhritarashtra wouldn't listen. So now he was happy and he recollected all those calamities that came into Pandavas' lives. But then he himself answered, although so many calamities came into your life, but you were always protected because of these three principles. He mentions three principles which protected the Pandavas against all the dangers. And if we also in our life want to be protected, because this is the nature of the world, no matter who we are, we will have to go through trials and tribulations. Sometimes because of our karma, sometimes because of the nature of the world, because there are two types of people in this world, the good and bad, and they are always going to exist, and the bad will always try to trouble the good. But if we stick to these three principles, then we shall always be protected. We shall also be protected like the Pandavas were protected. No matter how big the calamities are, no matter how big our enemies are. And these three principles Bhishma mentioned, which protected the Pandavas. Number one, he said, because of your faith in Krishna, no matter what happened in the life of the Pandavas, how much they had to go through, if anyone had to complain, anyone had to lose faith in God, it was the Pandavas. They were Krishna's first cousins and his pure devotees. They were sinless, they were innocent. Still they had to go through so much. They could have easily lost faith. In our life we see one thing goes wrong and our spiritual life goes for a toss. Everything else goes on very nicely. We go for parties, we go for travels, we eat nicely, our entertainment goes on. But the first thing that we give up is our connection with God, our faith in God. Something that can save us is the first thing that we give up. So we should learn from the Pandavas' first principle, no matter what happened, they never lost faith in Krishna. Second, their respect towards the saints, the saintly people. And number three, adherence to dharma. No matter what happened, they never took to the path of adharma or irreligion. They always did follow, and they always followed the path of righteousness. So these three principles we also must try and incorporate in our life, and we shall also be protected. We shall always be protected from all types of dangers. So Dhritarashtra, And Duryodhana, when they saw all attempts to eliminate the Pandavas failed, so they decided to hold a gambling match in which the Pandavas were cheated of their kingdom. They were exiled to the forest for 13 years, including 1 year incognito. And when the Pandavas came back and asked for their rightful share of the kingdom, Duryodhana refused to give. In fact, he said he wouldn't give enough land to drive a pin through. Krishna went as a messenger. All the peacemaking efforts, when they failed, now the war was the only way out. That was the only option left, because being Kshatriyas, Pandavas were duty bound to rule. They just asked for 5 villages at least. Even that Duryodhana refused to give. Now the war was inevitable, and therefore the two armies, Pandavas gathered their armies, Duryodhana gathered his allies, and the battlefield Kurukshetra was chosen. So Dhritarashtra, being blind, he could not go to the battlefield. He had his secretary Sanjay, who was blessed with a divine vision by Vyasadeva, and where he could just see what was happening on the battlefield while being seated in his palace, and report everything to Dhritarashtra. So in this situation, when Kauravas and Pandavas are standing in front of each other and ready to kill or be killed, Dhritarashtra, out of great anxiety, is asking this question: "O Sanjay, after being assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do?" So his fear comes out. And naturally, when we are haunted by fear, the first thing that comes out is the cause of that fear. So the first word that comes out of Dhritarashtra's mouth is Dharma Kshetre. The battle was taking place at Kurukshetra, which has been described in the Puranas as a holy place of pilgrimage, a Dharma Kshetra. And therefore Dhritarashtra was very doubtful. This word is significant because a holy place has the potency to increase the power of the holy people and decrease the power of the unholy people. And Dhritarashtra knew very well that the Pandavas were holy and therefore their power would increase, and his own children Duryodhana and others were unholy, so their power would decrease. Pandavas were already very powerful, so their power would increase further. So he was very anxious about it. Secondly, the holy place also has the potency to purify the contaminated consciousness. So Dhritarashtra was worried. That's why he's asking, what happened after that? Because he was thinking, under the influence of the holy place, my son's consciousness might change, and he might just come back to senses, regain his senses, and he might just return the kingdom back to the Pandavas, understanding that it rightfully belonged to them. And Dhritarashtra never ever wanted this compromise, because he was also as attached to the throne as Duryodhana, although he never openly said it. Thirdly, the holy place is also is compared to a field. It is, the word used is kshetra. Kshetra also refers to field. And suppose it is a rice field, so what is expected to grow? Rice. But we see that those who know about this science, along with the main crop, the weeds also grow. So what is done to the weeds? They are uprooted and thrown away. So what kind of field is this? What kind of kshetra is this? Dharma kshetra. So naturally it is expected dharma would be allowed to grow and the weeds of adharma would be uprooted. And everyone knew very well, including Dhritarashtra, who followed dharma and who was adharmic. Kauravas were adharmic, Duryodhana and others, and Pandavas were dharmic. So that was another sign which indicated that Pandavas would come out victorious. That's how Dhritarashtra felt. So he was anxious. And most importantly, the Dharma Shastras say, in a battle between dharma and adharma, dharma eventually wins. Dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. that one who follows dharma is protected by that dharma, and one who destroys dharma is destroyed by the same dharma. So Duryodhana was following adharma, and the battle was taking place in a dharma kshetra, in a dharmic place. And the father of dharma, Krishna, was on the side of the Pandavas. That was another cause of worry. So that's how, in great anxiety, Dhritarashtra is asking this question. These are the external reasons. But what is the internal reason? Why is he so fearful? He was ruling over this world. He had the support of wealth. He had more powerful warriors on his side. And the number of warriors were greater. Still he is anxious. Still he is not happy. He is not satisfied. The reason is because he is sinful. So sin is always accompanied by fear and anxiety. Whatever anxiety, distress that we experience in life is due to the result of our past sins, committed knowingly, unknowingly, committed through words or actions. By God's grace, in Kali Yuga, we do not get any reaction for wrong thoughts. But when they turn into words and actions, that's when we get a reaction. Till Dwapar Yuga, people would get reactions even for wrong thoughts. But in Kali Yuga, we are blessed that the Lord does not give us reaction for wrong thoughts. Otherwise, every moment we shall be getting punished. So we should stop our thought process at the level of thoughts only and not let them turn into words and actions. They should not come out as words and actions. Till then we are safe. So Dhritarashtra, we can easily say, is one of the main villains of Mahabharata. Because as a king, he had the power to stop this war. He had good counsel in the form of Bhishma, Vidur, Sanjay, sometimes Dronacharya also. But he was so attached to Duryodhana, he never listened. Now, any father, it is but natural that he would be attached to his son. But that's all right. Attachment is fine. But Dhritarashtra was sitting on the throne. He was the ruler. He was the king. And as a king, as a leader, as a ruler, he was responsible to a larger family. If he was not the king and he was showing attachment to his son, it wouldn't have mattered so much, because depending on what position we are in, that much damage we can cause to society, to the number of followers we have. Since he had a responsible position, and a king is supposed to be the representative of God, and a king is not supposed to be jealous or envious or partial, therefore he was one of the main villains. He was one of the main culprits of this behind this war. 64 crore men died in this world war. If he wanted, he could have ordered Duryodhana, stopped it. But he never listened to good counsel. That was his problem. He was not just physically blind, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. Krishna also tried to persuade him, counsel him. He said, I know Krishna is the Supreme Lord. I know I am wrong. I know this, I know that, but I cannot do it. So whenever Krishna is pleased with me, I will be able to do it. He just used this as an excuse, like a typical materialist. If you call them, come to a temple, come to a discourse, let's chant the Lord's holy names, let's practice spiritual life. They say, no, we should not do it unless it comes from within. Only when the Lord desires, I will be able to do these things. No, we are all blessed with a free will. And that's why whatever choices we make, we are held responsible for those choices. So we always have that free will to turn to God or to turn away from Him. We can't say whenever He is pleased with me. The very reason that somebody is asking us that let's go for these things, let's do these things, is a proof that the Lord wants us to do these things. Now, what do we want? We want the Lord to personally come and stand in front of us to invite us? No. We are not that qualified. So when we get these invitations from somebody, we should know the Lord is calling us. It's the Lord sending the invitation through someone, and we should just accept wholeheartedly. So Dhritarashtra is one of the sorry figures of Mahabharata, and as the name suggests. Now, Dhritarashtra literally means one who steals others' property or kingdom. But how was he the stealer? Because the names were always given according to, or this is the system, the names should always be given to children according to the family lineage they belong to, or their character, their qualities, or there are three things: family lineage, their qualities, and their karma, their actions. So it goes to show that his real name was not Dhritarashtra, because no parent would give his child the name a thief, a stealer of others' property. But his actions were so bad that when Vyasadeva wrote Mahabharata, eternally he has given him the name Dhritarashtra. So our actions are very, very important. Our fame in this world, whether it will last forever, depends on what kind of actions we perform, what kind of legacy we leave behind. Similarly, his son Duryodhan, his name was Suyodhan, but because he always fought against the rules of the battle, he always cheated, so he was given the name Duryodhan, one who always acts against the rules of the battle. And this was seen even during the 18-day Mahabharata war also. So Dhritarashtra is extremely anxious, and he asks his secretary Sanjay to explain what's happening on the battlefield. And therefore Sanjay, in the second verse, Sanjay uvacha drishtva tu pandavanikam vyudham duryodhanastada acharyam upasangamya raja vachanam abravit. Sanjay said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Sanjay is a noble soul. Although he always tried to counsel Dhritarashtra, he never listened, but he was still being very gentle. He's a saintly person, and saintly people are gentle to all types of people. So he's very compassionate towards this blind king who is extremely appearing to be anxious. So he tries to encourage him in two ways, as mentioned in this verse. One is he's addressing Duryodhana as Raja. Don't worry, King Duryodhan went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Don't worry, everything is fine. So that gave Dhritarashtra some joy when he heard, oh, my son is still the king, Raja, he's still the king. And second, deeper principle, Sanjay is trying to encourage Dhritarashtra by saying, don't worry. He immediately went to his teacher, he immediately went to Dronacharya. So indicating that however big the problem might be, as soon as we take shelter of our Guru, it marks the beginning of the end of that problem. Therefore, taking shelter of a Guru, having a bona fide Guru in our life is very, very important. So this way Sanjay encourages, and he starts explaining what's happening on the battlefield. So we stop here, and we shall see you tomorrow from text number 3.